Between 1945 and 1950, 5 people disappeared in a small stretch of southwestern Vermont. They were different ages. They vanished in different seasons, under different circumstances, on different days. One was an experienced hunter who knew those woods better than almost anyone. One was an 18-year-old college student who vanished in front of witnesses. One disappeared from a moving bus while other passengers were seated around him. One was a small child who went missing within yards of where his mother was working. One was found months later in an open field that had been searched repeatedly. Her cause of death, undetermined. 5 people, 5 years. One remote area of Vermont. None of them were ever fully explained. This is the Bennington Triangle. And the reason it remains unsettling is not because the cases are dramatic. It is because the facts in each one stop abruptly at exactly the wrong moment. The area at the center of these disappearances is a roughly triangular region anchored by the town of Bennington, Vermont. At its heart is Glastonbury Mountain, a remote, heavily forested peak in the Green Mountain Range. The mountain sits within what was once the town of Glastonbury, a logging settlement that had largely been abandoned by the early 20th century. By 1937, the town had officially lost enough residents to be reclassified as an unorganized township. Today, it is one of the least populated and least visited areas in New England. The Abenaki people who inhabited this region for thousands of years before European settlement had long regarded Glastonbury Mountain as a place to be treated with caution. Accounts reported by early settlers described the mountain as a location where the 4 winds were believed to meet, a spiritually significant and, in their understanding, dangerous place. The Abenaki reportedly did not camp or hunt on the mountain itself. Whether that tradition is relevant to what happened in the 1940s is a matter of interpretation. What is not a matter of interpretation is that 5 people went into or near that area and were never seen again, or were found under circumstances that raised more questions than they answered. The first disappearance was on the 12th of November, 1945. Mitty Rivers was 74 years old. He was a hunting and fishing guide, a man who had spent decades working in these woods, who knew the trails, the terrain, the seasonal patterns of the forest. On that day, he was leading a group of 4 hunters through the area near the Long Trail, a footpath that runs the length of Vermont through the Green Mountains. At some point on the return trip, Rivers got ahead of the group. He was found the following day in a state of confusion near a stream. He appeared disoriented. He seemed not to know where he was. Then he disappeared again. A river was searched. The surrounding terrain was combed. Mitty Rivers was never found. One small clue, a single rifle cartridge discovered near a stream bank. Nothing else. A man who had spent more than half a century in these woods vanished in country he knew like his own home. Less than a month later, on the 1st of December, 1946, Paula Weldon disappeared. Weldon was 18 years old, a sophomore at Bennington College. She decided to take a hike on the Long Trail, the same general area where Mitty Rivers had vanished the previous year. She did not tell anyone at the college where she was going. She hitched a ride to the trailhead and set off. What makes Weldon's case distinctive is that she did not disappear when she was alone. An elderly couple from Bennington had also arrived at the trailhead that afternoon. They spotted Weldon walking ahead of them on the trail and decided to follow the same path. They kept her in sight. She was wearing a bright red parka, easy to see against the gray and brown of the late autumn woods. They estimated she was about 100 feet ahead of them. A short distance, parka. No sound of footsteps on the leaf-covered path. The couple immediately raised the alarm. A search was conducted. The trail was walked again. The surrounding forest was searched. Paula Weldon was never found. Her father hired a private detective. The case received newspaper coverage across New England. The Vermont State Police, at this point still operating without a dedicated detective bureau, launched what resources they had. Nothing. 3 years passed. On the 1st of December, 1949, exactly 3 years to the day after Paula Weldon's disappearance, James Tedford vanished. Tedford was a resident of the Soldiers' Home in Bennington, a facility for veterans. He had been visiting relatives in St. Albans, Vermont, and was making the return journey by bus. There were 14 other passengers on the bus. Witnesses later stated that Tedford was on the bus as it made its last stop before Bennington. They had seen him. He was in his seat. When the bus arrived in Bennington, Tedford was gone. His luggage was still in the overhead rack. His return bus ticket was in the seat pocket in front of him. No one had seen him leave. No one reported seeing him at any stop. The bus had not made any unscheduled stops between the last confirmed sighting and Bennington. A man on a moving bus, surrounded by other passengers, simply ceased to be there. James Tedford was never found. The fourth disappearance happened on the 12th of October, 1950. Paul Jepson was 8 years old. His mother had been working on the family's farm near the Somerset Reservoir, a remote area on the edge of the Glastonbury Mountain region. She had briefly left Paul unattended. When she returned, he was gone. A search was launched immediately. Bloodhounds tracked Paul's scent toward the area of the mountain and the long trail. Then the trail went cold. The dogs lost the scent entirely. At a point where the trail should have continued clearly, it simply stopped. Paul Jepson was never found. The fifth disappearance, and in some ways the most disturbing, occurred just 16 days later. On the 28th of October, 1950, Frida Langer set out on a hike near the Somerset Reservoir with her cousin, Herbert Elsner. Langer was 53 years old, physically fit, an experienced hiker who knew the area well. At some point during the hike, she slipped and fell into a stream. Elsner watched her fall. She told him she was going back to their camp to change her wet clothing. She knew the way. It was not a difficult road. Elsner continued the hike. When he returned to camp, Frida Langer was not there. A search began immediately. Over the following weeks, it expanded significantly. Search parties covered the terrain around Somerset Reservoir extensively. The weather was poor, but the effort was sustained. Frida Langer was not found. 7 months later, on the 12th of May, 1951, her body was discovered. It was found in an open area near the Somerset Reservoir, an area that had been thoroughly searched multiple times. The body was badly decomposed, so badly, in fact, that the medical examiner was unable to determine a cause of death. How her remains came to be in a location that had already been searched after 7 months in Vermont winter conditions was never satisfactorily explained. 5 disappearances in 5 years. The term Bennington Triangle was coined decades later, in 1992, by Vermont author Joseph Cittrell, who had been documenting the cases. The name stuck. Vermont State Police, largely in response to the wave of disappearances in the late 1940s, established its first official detective bureau. The cases, in a practical sense, helped build the apparatus of modern investigative genuinely unforgiving. The forest is dense. The weather changes quickly. The terrain is rugged and poorly marked in places, particularly away from the main trails. Experienced hikers have been lost in conditions like these. It happens, but this explanation strains when applied to all 5 cases together. Mitty Rivers knew the terrain. Paula Weldon vanished in front of witnesses on a clear trail. James Tedford disappeared from a bus. Paul Jepson's scent trail ended inexplicably, and Frida Langer's body appeared in a location that had been searched repeatedly before she was found. A serial killer has been proposed. The concentration of disappearances in a small area over a short time period is consistent in some respects with predatory behavior. But no suspect was ever identified. No physical evidence of foul play was found in any of the cases, and the range of victims, ages 8 to 74, male and female, different circumstances and times of year, does not fit a typical pattern. Animals are sometimes sighted, bears in particular. Vermont's black bear population is substantial, but a bear attack in that terrain would almost certainly leave physical traces, and no such traces were found in any of the 5 cases. What the cases share beyond geography is a particular quality. They all end at a moment near resolution. Rivers vanished after being briefly found. Weldon disappeared 20 seconds after someone last saw her. Tedford was there, then not there. Langer's body turned up but had no right to be. Each case ends precisely where the evidence should begin. Nobody was ever charged in connection with any of the 5 disappearances. No remains were found for 4 of the 5 victims. No personal belongings were recovered. No witnesses produced useful testimony. The long trail still runs through the area. Glastonbury Mountain is still accessible to hikers. The town of Glastonbury is still largely empty. Whatever happened between 1945 and 1950 in that stretch of Vermont left no trace that anyone has been able to follow. 5 people went into the woods, or onto a bus, or into a field, and the record simply stops. The Bennington Triangle has never been explained. This has been the Pale Dossier. File 04 remains open.